Welcome to Legacies, a journey through the interesting lives of elders. My name is Roberta Robinson. I'm Director of Marketing and Outreach for the Geriatric Division of the Cambridge Health Alliance. This program is done in collaboration with the Cambridge Health Alliance as well as Somerville Community Access TV. We often have no idea what lives people have led and the experiences they've gone through. We decided to showcase a few of our elders so they could share their experience, strength, and hope with you. We hope you enjoy it. Today we have with us Elynor Gittens. Welcome, Elynor.
Thank you.
Elynor is a Somerville resident, and she is, may I say your age?
Oh, yes.
88 years young, Elynor.
Yeah.
So, Elynor, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, your parents, a little bit of the history.
Well, about my grandparents, my mother's mother was born in Ireland and came over here. I think she came to escape the potato famine. And my mother's father was born, I believe, in Barbados. And
that's West Indian.
Yes,
is that West Indian?
Yes. And my father's mother escaped Russia with her family, escaping the Tsar's pogroms. And she came over on the boat and always said she wished she had dropped my father off the side of the boat.
Well, you had some feisty grandmothers there.
That's true. And my father's mother, and his father was a cobbler. And after he came here, he still did that. And he also, I believe, was a left-winger, which is probably why he had to leave Russia also. Now, they both lived in the South End, and
Is that where you were born?
Yes, yeah.
And your mother, as you said, is West Indian and Irish. And your dad, Russian?
Yes.
100% Russian?
Yeah.
Yes. So, and you were born in the South End.
Right.
And you grew up there. And tell us a little bit about your background with your mom having, your dad going off to...
Right. It was the time of Depression, and there were no jobs, and my father went in the Merchant Marine, and then...
Was this at the time of the European invasion?
No, this was Depression times, 1927.
1927.
The time I was born.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and my father went in the Merchant Marines, and... Excuse me. There weren't many jobs around there at that time for women, but show business was very big. And my mother and her sister went into show business as dancers.
Her sister as well?
Yes, as dancers. And my brother and I went to Holbrook to a very nice family where we stayed until I was about 12.
And your mother, danced at the casino?
Yes, she did, but also danced all over the Northeast.
All over the Northeast?
In theaters. Theaters were very big at the time.
And they moved around?
Yes.
With a theater company?
Traveled, yes. Yeah.
But she danced at the casino, and the casino was also where people like John Wilkes Booth and Gypsy Rose Lee performed.
Yeah. I also worked in the casino.
You did?
In the chorus.
So then you grew up, and then you took after your mother's footsteps, walked in her steps, and you became a dancer.
That's true. It was natural. And I studied dancing as a child, but it was just very natural to work as a dancer in choruses.
And then, so tell us a little bit about when your mother came. You were at the family in Holbrook, and then your dad was in the service?
Yes.
And then Dad came home?
Yes. And that was after the war. We're talking about the Second World War. And And from Holbrook, my brother and I and my mother moved to the South End.
You went back to the South End?
Yeah, back to the South End. And my brother Billy wanted to be in the service.
How old?
He was 16 at the time, and I think that by the time he got in, he was 17. And she had to sign him in.
Really?
Yes. And then...
So tell us a little bit about Billy now.
Yes. He was in the Marines, and he was killed in the Second World War. And he was killed in the Battle of Saipan, a Japanese island that was entrenched. And the Japanese were in total control of it. But still, the authorities, whoever they are, sent boatloads of young people onto Saipan, knowing what the odds were, and they were, as they got out of the landing boat, they were just mowed down, and that was my brother's fate, to be mowed down as he got out of the boat.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it's very sad.
A life lost.
Yeah.
But your dad did come home, did he?
Yes, he was in the invasion, the European invasion.
Okay. And
And-
that time frame around that was around 45?
Let's see. I guess so, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Dad came home from the Merchant Marines, you said?
Well, he had gotten into the Army
Oh.
by that time, yes. And
And he returned, and then the family moved to an apartment.
yes.
And what did Dad do for work then?
Oh, he opened a furniture moving business.
Furniture moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was Mom doing?
She was just staying home at the time. Yeah. So,
Your mom took ill, did she, at a young age?
yes. Yeah.
And Elynor, look at me. You know your story. I'm sorry, you're going to have to cut away for that, but look at me. You know your story better than anybody. So look at me and talk to me about your story. Mom died of a stroke, right?
Yes.
At an early age.
Right. So anyway, after my brother died, I went to girls' high school, and that was on West Brookline Street. We moved to West Brookline Street, and girls' high school was the next street over.
Oh, so you just went to girls' high school, and then
Yeah.
after girls' high, you went to Mass Bay?
No, I went first to Leland Powers,
Before.
a school of radio and theater.
There you are, following in your mother's footsteps.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And how long was that course?
While I was at Leland Powers, I worked dancing in choruses at night, and that's where I met my husband, my first husband, who was a very great jazz drummer. And we moved to New York and lived there for about 5 years. And while in New York, I was interested in politics, and I went to the Jefferson School of Social Science and studied Marxism.
And can you tell us a little bit about Marxism? What is Marxism?
Well, Marx was a person the first person, I believe, to analyze capitalism, what it was. Up to that point, we'd all lived under it and so on, but he actually analyzed what it was, and that was the beginning of,
And that's what interested you.
yeah, I guess so.
And then you became involved in politics, did you?
Yes.
And what did you do? Did you become an activist?
Well, I was always an activist, and
I think you come by that naturally from the grandparents.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. So, in New York, I did study Marxism and danced in choruses. And
You were busy.
yeah, very busy.
And what type of dance were you doing?
I was doing modern dance. I studied dance while I was in New York. I studied it with Hanya Holmes, a modern dancer. She was one of the first to take off the shoes and the tight clothing and to dance very freely with a loose gown, and it was modern dance, very creative. And I also studied Afro-Cuban dance with Martha Catherine Dunham, and also ballet at the Metropolitan Opera Ballet School.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so in New York you danced,
Yes. Yeah.
and you married, and you had a family?
I didn't have a family until later. I divorced my first husband, came back to Boston, and started dancing around Boston as a solo dancer, wherever they hired dancers, clubs, theaters.
Did you remember Blindstrup's? Did you ever dance at Blindstrup?
I did, yes.
did?
Yeah.
Wow. What else? Some of the other clubs? We said the casino you
Yeah.
danced at.
Well, there was the Latin Quarter, and Barbara Walters' father owned that, and that was a big club. Then became the Mayfair, and I worked there also.
Now, was there a dance hall down at Scully Square?
Well, there was a burlesque theater. What was it? The Howard Theater, the old Howard.
The old Howard.
Yeah.
Did you ever dance in there?
I did.
You
yeah.
did. You made your rounds around
Danced
the city.
everywhere.
Right?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Did you remarry?
I did, but before that, while I was in New York, it was the McCarthy era, and Joseph McCarthy, a congressman, I guess, had a committee that was to ferret out communists wherever he found them, and he was very busy doing that. And one thing that impresses me the most about that time was the electrocution of the Rosenbergs. Apparently, the United States wanted to rev up its anti-Russia campaign, and so electrocuted the Rosenbergs. They had worked in Los Alamos in a place where they were developing the atomic bomb. The husband worked there, and
So they felt they were guilty of
they were found guilty of conspiracy.
conspiracy.
The government needed scapegoats, and they were it. And the tragedy about it is that Ethel Rosenberg was a beautiful woman and a wonderful mother, had 2 beautiful children, wanted nothing more than to be a mother. And the government was worried about electrocuting her because it looked so bad. And so they gave her a way out. If she would lie and confess to something that was less serious than conspiracy, they would let her go. But here's the point. She refused to take the offer, even though most women would have said, I will lie because I want to take care of my children. She would not lie, and so she was electrocuted. And she suffered greatly because she didn't die immediately, so it was torturous. And she left 2 beautiful children. And I think what she left to them is honor and some qualities for them to always remember. And the night she died, was electrocuted, I was dancing in a club, I think in Revere, and it was in the evening, and it seemed there was a pall over the club. It was to me, very dark and ominous. I knew exactly the time she was being electrocuted, and the strange part of it was I was probably the only one in the entire club full of people who knew that she was being electrocuted. One of the darkest moments of my life. Yeah.
And did that spur you on to have you more interested in politics at that
No,
point?
it didn't do that. No,
it didn't. No.
no.
So
Just-
then what were you doing at that time? You were in Boston at that time.
Yes, dancing clubs, and still interested in politics. Met my second husband, whose family were from Barbados. He was a wonderful person, and
What was his name?
we married McDonald Gittens, Mac.
Called him Mac.
Mac, yeah. And we had 2 children, and Mac died early.
Did he have a stroke?
Yes, he had a stroke. Yeah.
So both your mother and your husband had strokes.
Yes.
And it cost them their lives.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was left with the 2 children. I wanted
And the kids were young? Were they young?
Yes, my older one was 7, I think, when he died, yes.
And how? And what's the age difference between the two?
1.5 years.
So about 5 and 7.
Yes. yeah.
Wow.
And I wanted them to have a decent education, so I moved out of Boston, moved to Brookline where the schools were good. And I looked at my daughter's work in school, and they were teaching new math, and it was totally foreign to me. It was very abstract. I knew nothing about it. And that bothered me because I didn't know how I could possibly help them if I didn't know what they were studying. So I went back to school, first to Northeastern Nights, and then to Mass Bay Community College, and then to Boston University. Oh no, to Boston UMass, and then worked as a secretary at Boston University. And there was a union there. And I don't know if you've worked with a union, but it's a very good thing because if your employer does not like you, he can't fire you. So it's very good.
So you felt protected.
Yes, I did,
And
yeah.
as a woman then working and supporting your children, that was an important thing for you.
Yes, that's true. And then while I was there were benefits for the employees, and my daughter, younger daughter, was able to get her master's there in, oh dear, I had told you, she had a master's
Anthropology?
in anthropology, thank you. And then she went on to law school there. I think that they even paid for law school. At that
Really?
time, yes.
So her education was...
There was a benefit for the employees working there.
Wow.
I'm sure that's gone. They don't do that now.
Probably not, but you were grateful for it.
Absolutely. And I myself went into a master's program there for teaching English to speakers of other languages. And-
ESL, we call it?
Yeah, ESL, right. And then I went to work at Bunker Hill Community College teaching ESL, part-time, of course, maybe 1, 2, or 3 classes a week.
Were you still working at BU at that time?
Yes,
And the
I
girls were
believe so.
growing.
yes. And let's see.
So you taught at Bunker Hill for how long?
Yes, 10 or 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I retired, and I'm now living in assisted living in
How old were you when you
Somerville.
retired, Elynor?
I guess that was about 10 years ago.
10 years
more.
ago?
Yeah. Maybe it was 15 years ago. I don't know.
So you were in your, were you 70 when you retired?
Probably.
Wow, good for you. Wow.
Something like that.
And you're at the V&A Assisted Living in Somerville,
Yes.
and you've been living there for how long?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, you were, did you tell me you were on the Tenants Council?
Yes.
You were president.
Yes, I was.
Right. And you, are you interested in any other committees or activities, or do you do anything else today?
Well, I tutor a couple of people there in ESL.
You do?
Yes.
Right at the assisted living?
Yes.
Well, good for you.
A couple of people who work there.
Great. And then, are you interested in politics, or are you an activist anymore? Do you have?
I'm always an activist.
You're always an
Yeah.
activist.
And I have signs on my walker. One says, Black Lives Matter, and the other one says, no justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace.
Yeah.
Well, certainly those are strong messages
Yeah.
to give to the community and the community that you live with. Do you get a lot of comments about that?
Yes, not everybody knows what it means.
So you have a chance to explain it to them.
I do, yeah, if they ask, if they want. But it's, I don't proselytize, is that the word?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's
You don't
just,
stand on a soapbox and
no, I don't. I just have my signs on my walker, go out in the yard, and stand there. Because I can't hold signs, so they're on my walker.
there you go. And I think that speaks for itself. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Certainly an interesting story. And for those of you out there, you see that Elynor is 88 years old and still involved and retired at age 70. So it doesn't matter how old we are, we can always do something and stay involved. Thank
Good.
you for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you next time.